Good afternoon, beautiful friends. It is a beautiful day in Chicagoland. I am back with you from Indiana yesterday. I was over in the Joliet office yesterday for accountability. We'll have that recording out to you later today, along with this recording from this session. Then I got to go over to Indiana and be with my mom for her 81st birthday. So I think
Happy
I'm
birthday.
yes, so I think I'm missing a few text messages and emails I got to get back to people, but we have had such a great few days here. Really cool stuff happening going on at the office. So thank you guys for being here. And if you were on accountability yesterday, I know we went over and on and talked a little bit long yesterday. So today we want to get our session going and be on schedule, which sometimes with me is tough. We have a really great good friend of mine, great appraiser, as a guest today. I wanted to bring on camera and bring on for Ask Us Anything. And his name's PJ Troutman. PJ actually some has done appraisals for some of you, and he owns his own brokerage downstate, which I really like collaborating with other brokerages and other people in the industry that sometimes wear multiple hats because they have an extra level of appreciation for your portion of the business. So PJ owns a brokerage downstate and also is an appraiser here in Chicago as well as downstate. So he really has both the appraiser hat on and the broker agent hat on. And I thought that would be a unique person to bring on today. We've had other appraisers join us before for training sessions, but PJ is a good personal friend of mine, but also an appraiser I use regularly and recommend to you. So we wanted to see, as we've been noticing more appraisal issues popping up lately, what questions you had for PJ, and then also PJ, maybe you would like to tell us a little bit more about what you see on the appraisal landscape, and maybe some tips on how to stay out of the doghouse when we're dealing with buyers and sellers trying to get things to appraise out in this crazy market we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll be happy to speak on some changes that will be coming down the line and answer any questions that your brokerage has.
Awesome. So, PJ, first of all, tell us a little bit more about your background, your history both on the appraisal and the brokerage side.
Yeah, so I first got into real estate in 2006. I first got into real estate as an appraiser. I was an appraiser before I became a realtor. I became a realtor in 2008 and then a managing broker in 2015. I expanded the appraisal portion of our business from Champaign to Chicago in 2014. And I've been appraising in Chicago since 2014. And I have one full-time appraiser who lives in Chicago who's dedicated to the Chicago market.
Nice. So you've got local boots on the ground right here in Chicago. So tell us a little bit more about these appraisal changes that are coming, because this is news to me. I wanted to bring you on based on feedback from our agents saying, hey, we're having some issues with appraisal. Talk to us more about the appraisal process in general. Lyle, I know you get a lot of questions as our designated managing broker, Chicago Association of Realtors designated managing broker of the year 2022. You've seen a lot over the years as well. PJ, tell us what's coming, what's next in our list of challenges in this crazy industry.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that's changing for appraisals is all of our forms are going to be changing next year in 2026. So right now we have separate forms for a single family appraisal report or a condo appraisal report or a separate form for a 2 to 4
Did you
unit
go eat?
appraisal. Now we
Sure you
are
did.
basically transitioning to just one appraisal form, which will actually look a lot like if you've seen the HUD closing disclosure forms these days, the appraisal forms will actually end up looking a lot like those. So it'll have little sections with black headers and it will just kind of carry you through. It will start with like a drop down of what the property type is, and then the form will kind of autofill from there based on the property type, but it will provide appraisers with the opportunity to provide a bit more narrative descriptions regarding adjustments and things like that. So it should provide more transparency and clarity to the consumer, to other real estate professionals.
Okay, so did not know that was coming, but at least there's some clarity there. Uh, PJ, what in as an appraiser, what are you seeing as challenges right now that maybe you would like to see realtors maybe do differently as buyers agents or sellers agents, or some tips for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think every market, every neighborhood is different. So I think understanding your market area and what's going on in your market area is definitely important. I think it's beneficial to periodically meet with an appraiser or chat with an appraiser to talk about what's going on in different markets. I know some markets right now are already getting multiple offers and value prices are going over the list price. I think it's important for realtors to remember why that list price was chosen. Obviously that price was chosen for a reason. In my eyes, a list price is generally decided on because that's usually a safe place where we know the property is going to appraise. And so if a property sells for over a list price, I think it's important for realtors to remember to incorporate those negotiating tools if your client is able and willing to do either an escalation or an appraisal gap, affirming to the seller that they would be willing to cover any down shortfall in the appraisal process. At the end of the day, you could have 10 different appraisers appraise the same property, and we're going to probably come up with 10 different values. The definition of our job is to provide our opinion of value. And so everybody's going to have their own opinion. So it's just important to be proactive in these markets and really advise your clients on what could happen in these multiple offer situations. How aggressive do they want to be? And I think it's fair to incorporate those appraisal gaps and not rely so much on the appraiser kind of being the superhero in all of this. We have to work within our parameters as well. And if a property is selling for well over what, the market indicates it should be, you shouldn't be relying on the appraiser to make that appraisal work out to your contract price. We often hear, oh, the appraisal came in low. I think that's an opinion statement that it's low. What if your contract price was high? So I think everybody has an opinion. I think this market is moving very rapidly, and so it's important to stay very in tune with what's going on and the market demand.
PJ, one of the reasons that I was so excited to have you here today was to maybe talk a little bit more about the fact that appraisers don't think the same way about properties that real estate brokers do. You know, we have a tendency to say, well, I'm only going to consider comps that are between Division Street and North Avenue and Ashland Avenue or Damon Avenue and Western. And that's not how an appraiser thinks. And so I hope that you'll be able to talk a little bit more about, like, sometimes you have to think in geographics, which is more like what an appraiser does.
Yeah, absolutely. Emerald has this great feature when you're searching for properties. You can center on an address and look for a radius around it. That's usually how I start out with pulling my comparables is by a geographic boundary first and then expand out from there if I need to. I think, when you talk about how appraisers look at properties differently than realtors, I think one of the big things that come to mind for me are those items that really will impact marketability over value. So, every home is going to be assumed to have a working roof, a roof that is, operating and doing the job that it's intended to do. And I think a lot of people think that by putting a brand new roof on or an expensive roof on, that might increase a property's value. And in my opinion, that impacts more of the marketability of that property. Somebody might be willing to make an offer on that property before another property because of the new roof feature. But because, a roof is needed for a home, it's kind of assumed and implied that every property is going to have a roof. So some of those items that, are more preference, and in some markets, we're having a hard time really even justifying some values for solar panels, which can be a very big complication in the real estate transaction. So I think, just really understanding that every market's different. We are able to do like a paired sales analysis to see how much different features are worth in a different market area. And so, I think all of that combined can really impact how appraisers look at things differently than a realtor. Our two main things that we're trying to determine that has the most subjectivity to it is the quality of construction rating and the condition rating. And that really kind of, drives how the comparables are adjusted in terms of if something's inferior or superior to the subject. So, yeah, I think, every market's different. Even just a day can make a difference in a market with one sale, that can totally shift the median or average prices of a market. So I think the value versus marketability aspect is one to definitely be aware of.
I I love the fact that you brought up solar panels because I think that they're going to be more and more problematic in our market because if a previous owner or the seller, I guess is what I'm saying, has put in solar panels that that owner owns, then that can be a boon. That can be like something that makes the home worth more. But if they have done one of those 40-year loans where they put solar panels on and the prospective buyer can't get rid of them because they don't want to pay the loan, then I mean, in that case, it detracts from the cost of the house or the value of the house.
And let's not forget that we have some solar panels that are 20, 25 years old now that are nearing the end of their useful life that are maybe even causing a hindrance to some properties or not, providing their effective economic benefit. So solar panels have been tricky. I think when it comes down to market data, we're still, it seems to be very early in having that market data to support that somebody's willing to pay more for a property with solar panels than one without. But certainly the cost benefit of just, sheer utility bills can be a benefit in its own.
And that's something, guys, that remember, you have Wayne Beals as our chief sustainability officer. PJ, we're kind of like the green office. We want to move the needle on that. And we're Wayne Beals from our office represents Greenline Homes, that is the electric and solar builder and developer on the south side of Chicago. Literally the only one, really. And they're kind of making the market. So we're hoping to change that narrative on solar, but we've got some other great questions in here. Mallory, she asked, as an appraiser, how do you negotiate the differences? I'm sorry, how do you negotiate or mitigate what your possible biases may be?
That's a great question. This is a huge topic that's very prevalent right now, both at Illinois Realtors. I attend those meetings, and as a realtor and an appraiser, it's a topic that kind of gets me going. I think that it's fair to say that it's impossible that every appraiser out there is unbiased and a ethical, good appraiser. However, I do think that there is a lot of narrative that has been created by the developers of automated valuation models. And the developers of these automated valuation models, or Zestimates as we commonly know them, have a lot of money pumped into creating these algorithms. And they might have an angle or a reason to try to convince people that people appraisers are bad and that we should move to more of a computer appraiser model where we allow a computer to do the appraisals of properties. And I think we all know that, every property is unique, every property is different, and there's no way for a computer to know all of those differences. There's no way for a computer to visit the property and see, some deferred maintenance or issues with the foundation or things like that. So there is a lot of buzz and a lot of talk right now around appraisal bias. And I think that it's important for appraisers and realtors to just be aware of this. And, generally, I think we've heard horror stories, which are awful about, an African American family living in a home and having their property appraised, and then stripping all the photographs and indications that an African American family lives there and replacing it with Caucasian family photos or things like that, and the appraisal comes back differently. And so, I would love to see a real life example of this. I'm sure it has happened before, but I do think that the narrative around this is very much so driven by the creators of automated valuation models. I think it's important for appraisers to understand bias and how it can impact markets. And no appraiser should be applying any bias to any appraisals. We should just be looking at market data. Market data is what should be driving our appraisal reports. And so, I think just looking at the market data and using the market data and pulling analytics from multiple different angles, you can look at a large area and then just dial in based on, property specifics to really check and balance your calculations and metrics. And I think that's the best way to, ensure that you're doing what you can to be unbiased.
This kind of reminds me, as someone who's been in the market or who's been in the business for a long time, it kind of reminds me of the days when we used to have drive-by appraisals. And I will tell you that I lost a client one time because their appraiser did a drive-by, underappraised the unit by a lot of money, and they lost confidence in me. And so I see this as sort of an extension of those days when they could do drive-bys, if they can do AVMs. I mean, there is never going to be a substitute that's adequate for boots on the ground and eyes on the property.
1000% on that. And actually, Dan Nolan had a great question. What about that? What can we do as the broker? So if we do get the gift of having the opportunity to have the appraiser be on site, what can we do as the broker, the agent, to help you prepare for your walkthrough?
Absolutely. So my biggest suggestion is that square footage is a topic that keeps coming up. For me, for appraisers, when square footage isn't a required field in the MLS, we're relying a lot on assessor information, which is not always accurate. So I think really making sure that your listings as a listing agent read as thoroughly and accurately as possible. I think, you can, if you have properties that are putting in the MLS, I think interior photos are always helpful for appraisers to be able to compare conditions of properties. I see Dan also asked what's the difference between an appraisal for a client and an appraisal for a lender. So if we're doing an appraisal for an individual, it goes on a specific form that is not Freddie or Fannie approved. It's called a GPAR form, which is a general purpose appraisal report. And nothing is really different about the process. The results should be the same, whether we're doing an appraisal for a lender or for a client directly. If we're coming up with, a current market value, it should be the same result, whether we're doing it for a lender or directly for the client. If we're doing an appraisal for a client, we also can do estate appraisals as of a certain date of death. So if somebody passed away a year ago and you need an appraisal as of that certain date of death, we can do retrospective appraisals as of that date. So that, is really the only like thing that would be different between what we do for lenders versus a client. But yeah, if you have a unique property that you have listed or that you're representing the buyer on, it doesn't hurt, to provide comparables to the appraiser when you meet them for the appraisal appointment. I take no offense in that at all. Feel free to help me get my file started for me. I'd love to see, what comps you use to price the property, or if you're the buyer's agent, ask the listing agent, what comparables did you use to price the property? It does not offend me at all if you provide me with that information. And oftentimes it usually turns out that I have the same comparables in my file already. So, but if you have a unique property that you find hard to list, you can't come up with a good listing price. We do pre-listing appraisals, market value appraisals for people who are about to go on the market. And so, that can work as a marketing tool for you as well. If it's a unique property or a property that's being a little bit more difficult to sell, you could leave that appraisal out on the counter and buyers can review it. So, there's several different ways we can help with appraisals. If a family is going through a divorce and one of the, spouses is going to keep the property, and the other is going to buy the spouse out, then we can do divorce appraisals as well. So whole wide array of different reasons why we're out appraising people's homes.
Well, and the other thing that I would say too, as having been in the business for as long as this gray hair all took, is that we need to look as real estate practitioners as the appraiser as our friend and not our enemy. And that is a problem that has pervaded our industry as long as I have been in the industry. And I started in this business in 2003. You the appraiser is not to be seen as your enemy. The appraiser is to be seen as your friend. That's why you give the appraiser comparables. And most appraisers come in with the attitude that they're not, if it's a sale and it's under contract, they're trying to affirm the value, not determine the value. That's the difference between like a personal appraisal, which is what PJ was just recently talking about, and an appraisal for an appraisal for a thing. They're just here to affirm the value. They're not here to screw your deal up. Now, they can't lie, and or it may be a very difficult situation. I'll tell you that last summer I had a situation where I had a listing on Kedzie just south of Roosevelt Avenue, and it was the nicest house in the neighborhood. And because of that, it didn't appraise. And we had to renegotiate things because I went out a mile and I could still not get comparables that would support the value of the home, even though the home did warrant the value that we sold it for. It is what it is. And sometimes things just don't work out. But once again, getting back to it, the appraiser is not your enemy. The appraiser wants to be your friend.
Correct. Yep, that's true. We are not out to kill a deal. That is not our objective. We Our client is the bank in most cases. So, if it's a VA or FHA order, there's some things that you can do there as well to help the process move along smoothly. If I would read up on what the minimum property requirements are for those loan types and just familiarize yourself with them. The common ones are chipping paint, missing handrails for handrails for stairwells, missing CO and smoke detectors, or missing GFCI outlets near a water source. Those are the main FHA, VA items that we tend to see, and those can delay a process, if the appraiser has to come back and check those items. So proactively, if you have a listing and your client is considering an offer from somebody who's presenting an FHA or VA pre-approval, I would just, double check and make sure that the property is ready for that appraisal assignment, for the appraiser to come out and look at it. Otherwise, it usually is easier to address those items before the appraiser comes instead of waiting for the list of things that need to be done, getting them done, then scheduling the appraiser to come back out. Uh,
Oh, did I lose you guys?
Housekeepers and seeing what the value of that house really is.
Yeah, so by the time we get to the property, there's typically moving boxes everywhere. The house is usually a mess. We are not there to look at their clutter or their mess. We're there to assess the house, the property. So, it's helpful if things are picked up and put away. This is you are you're being made aware that somebody is coming to put a value on your home. Why not present it in the best light it possibly can be presented? So I think it never hurts to pick up and make things look presentable for the appraiser. We will need to get into every room. We'll need to get into every mechanical closet. We'll have to look at the water heaters, the furnace. So make sure that those areas are accessible. If you're in a condo building, we don't necessarily need to look at mechanicals if they're in like an exterior mechanical closet, but we would like to see the amenities and know what's included, if there's parking, if it's deeded. Having, kind of, and most condos have a condo questionnaire sheet that appraisers will request that typically cover the majority of that information. But if there's anything unique about your listing, definitely make sure that the appraiser knows about it. But I think access to all areas, making sure any pets are put away that need to be put away so that the appraiser can get in and get out and do their job. I think that's the best way to prepare for the site inspection. Um, what types of repairs may not pass a conventional appraisal? So that is an interesting question. Personally, I can't remember a time that I've called out a repair on a conventional appraisal order, but I have seen appraisers call out state requirements like smoke and CO detectors that might be missing, any very obvious health and safety issues, or I guess if a property is in condition ratings range from C1, which is brand new, never been lived in construction, all the way to C6, which is uninhabitable, uh, beyond its physical life, tons of deferred maintenance. And so if a property is in C5 or C6 condition, typically the lender will require a list of items to bring that property up from the C5 or C6 condition rating to a C4 at least. And so in some situations like that, on a you know property that's in really rough shape, we may have some conventional loan condition requirements. Um, Again, vinyl plank flooring, to me, this is like a quality thing. It's a preference thing. It to me, it impacts marketability more than value. Flooring is going to be needed. So what type of flooring you choose is your personal preference, and it may influence a buyer to pay more for the property, but it may not hard impact the actual market value. So some differences there. Um, I think caught up on the chat questions. Thanks for pointing those out, unless I missed any.
They're great questions, guys. Oh, there's another one.
So if it's a VA, so somebody asked what happens if there's a car in the garage and it's blocking the pull down attic stairs. I keep a ladder with me, so if there's another attic access outside of the garage, I would access that. Otherwise, we would need to either have the car removed, or it's likely that the lender will require the appraiser to come back once the car is moved to take a picture in the attic. If it's for a VA or FHA appraisal assignment. If you see that a house went under contract in 1 or 2 days and maybe there were multiple offers, does that in any way affect your appraisal? Make the home appraise higher. So, in a multiple offer situation, I love it when the listing agent brings that to my attention. Hey, this was a super popular listing. We received 5 offers. Here's a copy of all 5 of them. That would be my preference in that situation. I'd love to see every offer and see exactly how the property ended up at the price it ended up. That I'm still looking at market data. I'm looking at closed sales to justify my appraised value, but knowing that there was a lot of interest, demand in that property can impact the results. So I would definitely make sure that the appraiser is aware that there were multiple offers, and if the multiple offers ended up driving the price over the list price. I think that's a great time to incorporate an appraisal gap and just ensure that everybody's on the same page, that if the property doesn't appraise for the contract price, what's going to happen with that difference? Again, the listing agent chose that list price for a reason. Why didn't they list it, higher at the contract price? And it's likely that that's where the home will, all day, every day appraise at. And so anything over and above that, I definitely recommend incorporating an appraisal gap addendum with that transaction. So everybody is just fully aware of what will happen if the appraisal does come in low. Yes, I can. I have a list of common FHA repair items that I will send over to you. We also do a lot of videos and information regarding appraisals on our Instagram account. I would encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, Troutman Agency. We like to keep people up to date on what's happening. Also on our website, we have an education tab, which has a lot of blog posts about appraisals and the process. So there are some more resources available to you there at troutmanagency.com. And then you'll just hit the education tab and you can browse through those.
So I'm typing this up in the notes for you guys too.
Thank you all so much for having me. Any other questions I can help with? Market predictions. I think the spring market is going to be just as crazy as they've been since the start of COVID. Have things been just off the wall? But I think inventory in some markets continues to be a major issue, which supply and demand. If there's no supply, that drives demand up. So we are likely to be facing some challenging appraisals. And so I think it's fantastic that we're proactively talking about this and that everybody's going to incorporate those appraisal gaps, use escalations to if you want, if your client wants. And yeah, if you ever have any questions about the appraisal process, or if you've received an appraisal that you don't think was accurate, I would be more than happy to review the appraisal for you, chat with you about it, understand what your concerns are, what you think might be wrong about it. But I would encourage everybody to really read the appraisal reports, especially the supplemental addendums, which will have more of the narrative dialogue in them. Oftentimes as an appraiser, I get people coming back at me with questions, and oftentimes the answer is already in the report if somebody would just read it through. Maybe try not jumping to conclusions. Make sure you've read through the report fully and completely. If you think that there's issues with it, I'd be happy to review it with you and understand what the concerns might be. Ultimately, if you have concerns with an appraisal, if it's a lender appraisal where the lender's the client, the lender ultimately needs to raise those concerns to the appraiser. And so the lender will typically only do that if they share the concerns. So if the lender is not concerned with it, they usually don't reach out to us. They'll usually try to address the borrower's questions. But I'd be happy to help anybody in that regard if there's appraisals that you think might not be fully accurate. Um, how does a distressed property plan into your job? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Predict stipulations. Do you mean like repair requirements, or if we see a crawl space where there's some water, we might call for an additional inspection, or if there's questionable, um, you know, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking there, but I think understanding the FHA loan requirements, the VA loan requirements might help you better predict what stipulations might come with an appraisal. And I don't know what you mean by how does a distressed property plan into your job?
I think, Dan, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, they're working on some trees in the back here, so it's been kind of loud here. I'm sorry. When it comes to either uh, a property that's under foreclosure, or a property that has been uh, under legal status, let's say, does that play into anything that has to do with your job?
I suppose that with our appraisal assignments, we are assuming that everything is transferring in fee simple, clean and clear title. And so, in I'm trying to think of a real life example. I think, so many foreclosures, I think, sell cash. We're not doing a ton of appraisals on foreclosures. I think no, not really. I mean, like if the condition reflects, a worse condition than the comparables, we're making adjustments based on the subject's condition to compare it to comparables that have sold in the market. Um, but no, I mean, we're assuming that we're using hypothetical conditions and extraordinary assumptions that the property is transferring in clean and clear title and that there's no encumbrances there. I guess is the best way to answer that, unless I'm still not getting the
No,
question.
no, it was and the stipulations were mostly around conventional. I too am having some struggles around conventional because I got FHA. We make sure that the house is FHA before you get there. But
Yeah,
the conventional and the stipulations is where I've been seeing some jam ups.
gotcha. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of are appraisal waivers. So this is another change that's coming to the market is, according to the Appraisal Institute, lenders are now going to mainly only have appraisers, people appraisers do physical appraisals on the less cookie cutter, more unique uh, type properties. So if you have a condo that's, in a large condo building, that definitely increases your chances for getting an appraisal waiver. The more and more that AI and automated valuation models kind of play into the appraisal process, the less cookie cutter appraisals we'll be doing, the less, just simple, easy, no questions asked appraisals. We're already starting to notice that the appraisal assignments we're receiving from banks are more of the trickier ones. And it seems like appraisal waivers are happening more on the simpler ones. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Thank you. It's nice seeing you. You answered a bunch of questions that really need to be asked too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
What, PJ, do you have time for one more?
I do, yeah.
Donna, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I had a question. So do appraisers, I'm asking this because I've had it both ways. When if it's an FHA or VA, consider chipping paint on the outside of a house. I've had two appraisers say something about one outside fence that was painted and one say something about some railings and a storm door. But then I had another house that was FHA and they said absolutely nothing about any of the chipping paint outside. And there was chipping paint outside. So how, and one we did do an appraisal waiver on because it was winter time and they couldn't paint the fence. But I'm just wondering what the actual stipulations are with chipping paint outside.
So if the component adds to the value of the property, like a shed or a fence, if the appraiser is counting those as adding value to the property, then yes, they do need to adhere to the minimum property requirements. There are times where we've had like an old, the shed is literally falling in. It's no longer providing any value to the property. We can exclude that shed, and let it be known in the appraisal report that that shed is not contributing value to the property, and you're not requiring any of the FHA required repairs to that component of the property. So yes, if there's chipping paint on exterior siding, windows, fences, storm doors, porch posts, garage trim, door jambs, yes, it should be painted unless that particular component is not contributing to value for the property.
Thank you.
Guys, anything else? PJ, you are a independent brokerage. You're downstate. You're in Champaign. What areas do you service in case we need to refer some business down to a great brokerage down there?
Yes, so we cover all of central Illinois. So Champaign, Urbana, Mahomet, Monticello, St. Joseph, Tolono, anything Champaign County, Douglas County, Ford County. Happy to help there. And then in Chicago, we cover Lake, Cook, and DePage for appraisal services. And we're happy to help with any appraisal needs in the Chicagoland area.
Awesome. So yes, so they are a brokerage that does not compete with us that will be great for referrals until maybe someday PJ will be with Exit. Maybe PJ will buy an Exit franchise in my dream world.
Liebert South.
Yes,
Way south.
always. He never stops selling.
But we do get referral requests for that mid section of Illinois. It would be nice to at least put it out there to you, if that's something that would be something you would take.
Absolutely. We'd love your referrals and we'll be happy to pay a nice referral fee on those.
Same to Indiana. Indiana does the same thing, but we're going to move on.
We're India in Indiana. We are open for business. Northern Illinois, come send us some stuff our way too, PJ. But for referrals for um, a great appraiser. He's got a guy right here in Chicago that I use regularly, and PJ's their contact person there. So PJ, thank you again. And PJ, what's your best number to contact you at?
My cell number, which is easy to remember, I'll give it to you. It's 217-714-1234.
Yep.
Again, 217-714-1234.
All right.
714, the Babe Ruth of appraisals.
I love it. And then one more. What's your email address you prefer?
PJ@troutmanagency.com.
This was really, really helpful, PJ. And please do send over that FHA most frequent repair items list. I will then send that on to everyone with the video of this, along with the nice AI notes of this today. So, PJ, I know you're busy. If you need to go, feel free. We appreciate your time. Do you guys have other things you want to ask or talk about today on Ask Us Anything? Janice, hello. Caroline, whoa. Oh,
I'd like a conventional list of what doesn't pass conventional appraisals. That's the hard part for me.
I got
They're,
to
they're
concur
really
with the conventional loan side.
sorry, what'd you say, Dan?
I concur with the conventional loan side. I'm pretty good at getting all the FHA things done before the appraiser gets there, but conventional is still a wild, wild west sometimes.
Yeah, I'm disappointed to hear that. I am unaware of, I guess, these concerns. Are you getting what sort of, from your experience, what sort of conventional loan stipulations or condition requirements are you getting? Really, the only one, if it's in like bad shape, they typically will ask for, what needs to be done to bring it up to the next condition rating. But other than that, like smoke and CO detectors that are required by state law would typically be the only other conventional loan requirement. But if you're seeing other stuff or if you're getting pushback, I'd love to see example appraisals of that. I'd love to know more about what you're talking about.
Mostly, it would be mostly around maybe basements, maybe missing drywall or tile in the missing tile in a bathroom area in a basement. It's mostly been basements though.
Yeah,
Same here.
there shouldn't be any requirements for are these unfinished basements and somebody's requiring it to be finished?
I
Who's
would think that they
requiring?
would probably be pulling drywall out because they had maybe water issues for whatever reason. But when they pull out the drywall and leave up the studs, it seems to be a problem.
Are you calling the basement finished?
No, that would be an unfinished portion of the basement.
Then I don't see why, if you're not calling it finished, why a lender would be requiring or an appraiser would be requiring you to finish a basement. You may want to consider a different lender.
Well, sometimes they come with their own lenders, but I do get your point.
So
Yeah.
It's mostly with deals that yeah, you're right on that.
so in my case, I have a buyer who's interested in looking or putting an offer on one, and the portion of the basement that the stairs have broken tile on is considered finished, but the steps are solid, but the tile is broken on and it could easily be replaced by a homeowner. It's nothing that you need a permit for or anything. And so I'm just wondering, is that something that will pass the conventional, because she does not have a rehab portion to her loan, and I don't want to take her through the whole thing and they don't want to do any work on it. They want it as sold as is.
I personally would not be calling that out for a conventional appraisal report. I think that it would be reasonable to call out as a safety concern for an FHA or VA appraisal assignment. But if your client is conventionally approved, every appraiser is different, but I would not be calling that out as a requirement.
Thank you.
Great questions, guys. All right. Anything else today for Ask Us Anything?
Oh, come on, guys. You gotta like throw us a curveball here once in a while, right?
I just have a question or insight. If that was the situation with a conventional loan and you could reach out to the appraiser and get more detail, would that be helpful? I'm just troubleshooting, just asking.
So once the appraisal has been submitted to the bank, you really should not contact the appraiser directly.
No,
So
beforehand, before.
beforehand, yeah, you could say to them, hey, you know, this isn't a conventional appraisal, correct? You're doing a conventional appraisal, and maybe just affirming that with them and asking them. I mean, if I have VA or FHA items that are deficient at a site inspection and there's an agent there with me, I will tell them what the items are. So I think asking the appraiser if there were any condition concerns or any required repairs is a fair question. I would have no problem answering that. Um, every appraiser might be a little different there.
I appreciate that because I'm working with an investor client who's been looking at properties that are, subpar. They're not really. So this has been very informative. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I think just to add on to what PJ said, like you need to do your homework prior to the appraisal. You need to arrive at the appraisal with a CMA that supports the value as best you can that the uh, property is under contract before. You don't want to be trying to get a modification after the appraisal's done because it didn't turn out the way that you and your client were hoping for. You need to get your homework done beforehand. Um, because and this is just my years of experience, most appraisers are very, very unwilling to modify the appraisal after it has already been done. And, you know, and that's just the way it is. I'm not going to make any judgments one way or the other about that. I'm just saying that that's the way it is. So you need to get your homework done and you need to get the information that you think is relevant to the appraiser at the time of the appraisal, which brings me to you need to attend your appraisals.
Yeah, great question here from Mo as well. So I explained to people that my inspection is a visual inspection only. I am not physically inspecting anything. It's just visual. And we've even started getting away from calling it a site inspection or even using the word inspection. We're trying to say site visit to kind of differentiate that a little bit more. But I think the way that I most often explain it is that my viewing is a visual viewing, and an inspector is going to more physically inspect the property. Appraisers do not see home inspection reports typically unless there's a pre-listing inspection that's sitting out on the counter. But even in that case, I am not really looking at it because I am just visually observing what I see for my appraisal report. We do get a copy of the sales contract. Sometimes not a complete packet with the escalation and appraisal gaps. So, but we do get the main portion of the contract.
Honestly, Donna, you do not want the appraiser to see the inspection report. You
I would agree with
100%
that.
do not want that. So don't leave it in the house. Don't give it to the inspector. Just give the inspector the quality information. I mean, I'm sorry, the appraiser, the quality information that the appraiser needs to get what you need to get done for yourself and your client and the bank. Like, yeah.
Just that, just that, and a nice smile, and you show those beautiful areas, then and give them the information that helped you price the property.
Yeah, as you go on this journey with me as your managing broker, you're going to find that I am remarkably frank about everything. And I'm just going to tell you the way it is. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm just going to tell you the way it is because I've learned the hard way so many times that I don't even remember how hard the hard way is.
Yep, and that is why we love you, Lyle. That is why we hired you. Guys, I want to end with this. And again, PJ, thank you so much for doing this for us today. We really appreciate it. I'm going to end with this today, guys. I'm going to share my screen. I want to give you a couple additional resources that are out there. So let me share my screen. You guys can hopefully now see my screen, right, guys? All right, let me bring this up a little bit. So if you go to either teamliber.com or Coach with Project X, any of my websites, you will see a link to my podcast. And my podcast, I don't do it every week like I used to, but my podcast has a library of frequently asked questions from consumers and sometimes from realtors. I have different categories for consumers and for realtors. So this is a whole library of stuff, including item 14 under the consumer category. What if my home doesn't appraise out? The real estate appraisal process from start to finish, which from a real estate agent with over 700 career transactions, guess what? Not all of those suckers appraised out as both a buyer's and a seller's agent. I walk you through the the process of, can you appeal it? What's the likelihood of it's going to go on? The agent cooperation required for that type of stuff. I give you all the different scenarios. So that is on my podcast. So that is another resource for you guys to dive into at some point if you're going to be a nerd of real estate. Um, Use it. Use these resources. Dive, deep dive into the resources you got from me, from Lyle. Even Laura Medina, our operations manager. She's been in the business a year longer than me. We've all either owned property, flipped property, done stuff. It's crazy the support system you have here in our leadership ladder. One last thing before I let you guys go. Yesterday, I showed you on accountability how to find your agent report card, which now at my prodding, Exit Realty International has put the residuals in there. I want to show it to you again. I did it yesterday and I made it a little, I fumbled the technology in sharing my screen. So I've already got my screen share up on either the Exit Resource Center or in your Exit Realty Connect app. You just go to under the My Reports tab. You're going to go to your report card. And I want to show you how to calculate what your actual split is in case you don't know. So you go into your report card and you can run your report card for any given year. And it will pull up all your, obviously not only your GCI, but it's also going to pull up your residual income. Okay, guys? So how do you determine your actual split? So I'm going to give you a live report card from Heather Walters. She allowed me to share hers. So this is her report card. This is an agent that is using the Exit Realty formula to the max. She's living what I call the exit dream. This is why I came to this company 17 years ago. Heather Walters is a capper for us normally. She capped hit 100,000 GCI the first year in the business. I'm not going to say I did it for her. She did all the work. I did coach her. She's an amazing agent. Last year, she focused on her family. She's got her daughter running around cheerleading nationals, all this cool stuff. She took time with the family. She didn't cap last year, but she still made more money. Her split, look at her split. We're going to talk about this. So you will hopefully, if you're doing your Exit Realty work as an agent, you're selling real estate. Your gross commission income is in this category. If you brought an agent or two on board, or three, like Heather's brought, I think 4 or 5 now, maybe more. This is what she took home last year, 63,816.83. Get your calculators out. If Heather was at a agent split of somebody that didn't cap out at exit, she'd be at what, an 80%, right? So if you start here at a 70-30 as a new agent, once you hit 10 career deals, you go to an 80-20. If she was at an 80-20, she would have taken home what? 51,000 I'm putting the calculator up for you guys. $51,053.46. Now, add that up on the right-hand side. What did she make in residuals? 22,000. So add $51,053 plus 22,572.99. That equals $73,626.45. Divide that by her GCI. So, in other words, what she took home after her split plus her residuals. Divide that by her GCI in this column, which is 63,816.83. What do you get? She's at 115% commission split. She's over 100%. That is my vision for you guys. Now, not everybody's going to do that, but if you would work this system, guys, that is why I came here 17 years ago. You saw my report card. Now, this was 2020. This is a good year, 2022. But even in a bad year, guys, I can go back and I can show you my first year at Exit. 2008, 2009, you're talking the dark days. $4,000 or $5,000 in residual income kept the lights on for me. So in these times, Exit is more valuable than ever to you. And now that Exit Corporate is allowing that residual column to be there, they were just like, well, that's private to the agent. And I said, I need to be able to show the agents, and I want them to see it visually right on their report card. And if there's a bunch of zeros, there's nothing in agent sponsored or nothing in residuals, you are not getting the most value out of this company. You are not. And remember, you have 2 training events tomorrow and Friday designed for realtors. The key rental law training event at 5:30 with Lana Victoria hosting, and then the Zenlist power training with me at noon on Friday. Invite agent friends and then be like, do you want a better split? You want the opportunity to earn more than 100%? This is the company to be at.
Yeah, and you know what? I just want to piggyback on that with saying that, especially in a market like this is a time when your negotiation skills with your clients becomes more and more important. I'm going to tell you that I have been in the business since 2003, and I have never taken a 5% listing. Ever. Not once. Ever. It was always over 5, and most of them were 6. Now, we live in a different world now. And so, honestly, it's easier because you can charge your sellers 3.5%. You can charge your buyer. I see every day buyer agency agreements coming through that are at 3.5% and not, or 3% and not 2.5%. I see it every day. So you guys are out there fighting, but you know what? You need to realize that, and I don't want to be, this is not preachy. This is just me being in the business since real estate was invented, like Nick. Like, you have got to be able to negotiate with your clients for what your value is going to bring to them. And so don't underestimate your worth. Just do it.
And can I show you one more thing to help you with that? If you are a buyer's agent and you are struggling with, yesterday I showed you how to go in. So these 2 sessions yesterday and today actually go together. Yesterday I showed you how to visually go in to Connect MLS, our MLS, and pull up all the history of Exit Strategy Realty with over 10,000 sales, so that you as a seller's agent can say, hey, I'm on a listing appointment. I may not have sold in your neighborhood, but we've represented blank number of people in this community. Over 10,000 career transactions, guys. So you are at a brokerage where you can pull that data up quickly. And then on the buyer side, let me show you how to visualize your worth to a buyer, your competitive advantage. It's called Zenlist. And if you guys are tired of me talking about it, You won't be, because this is your competitive advantage. You have this paid as part of your Project X platform. If you show a client in any given neighborhood what's really going on, sometimes it's the visual. You got to show them. So I'm going to pick on my own neighborhood, Lakeview. Right now in Lakeview. Nope, not Lakeview there. Where do I live again? Lakeview.
Your lake view is different than my lake view.
And all right. So in Lakeview, do you guys see my screen? This is what you can do. And I do this to people all the time. Like, you got two. I did this the other day. I had a friend that, God bless him, he has two agent friends. Oh wow, how funny. And and he goes, well, I'm not sure, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I said, did your other agent friend talk to you about the private listing network? He goes, no, what's that? I said, let me show you, dear friend. And I pulled up my Zen list and I pulled up our neighborhood or whatever neighborhood he's in. And I said, so if this person hasn't shown you the private listing network and given you Zen list, the only app that powers through this, here's 199 listings in our neighborhood. But see the ones that are blue, that are purpley blue? Okay, so all these listings, there's 199 of them. When I filter out of these, out of those 199, get your calculators out again. And I'm going to take it into listing sources. 199, 51. What's 199? What's 51 into 199? 25%. Did I freeze up?
Nope, you're good.
No.
But I
It's
think
the
that
right
is a
math.
very important point for you to make too, Nick, because you and I have probably similar feelings about the PLN and about TAN. However, it's the world that we live in, and we have to deal with the world that we live in. And just look at what he's showing you right now. I mean, he's showing you things that, are not necessarily apparent to a lot of people.
So in other words, how many agents are really using ZenList or understand the private listing network? You got to show your clients this and say, not only is ZenList amazing and cute to work with, and it's really fun. Guess what, guys? It's giving you the consumer sees 25% more properties. They're going to get into properties quicker, faster, and I cannot articulate enough. You should not ever be losing a buyer. And on the sell side, I got all kinds of bells and whistles we can walk through for you. All commissions are negotiable, but I'm sorry, you are the buyer's agent of choice. We've got educational events constantly. We give back to the community. This is a no-brainer to me. So know your worth.
Yep. So as we wrap this up, I want to say that I'm catching up on things today. I had a trifecta of bad news. I know I always sound like I have bad news, but unfortunately, it's just been a difficult, however, few months. But I do want to take just a second to shout out to our colleague at Berkshire Hathaway who died on Monday of brain cancer, Rich DeVito. He was a prince among men. Some of you might know him, some of you might not. But I don't think there's ever anybody who would say that they didn't love him. And so it's sad, but it's one of those things that happens in our industry.
Yeah, this has been I can't remember a time in real estate that has been more, sad. We had the NAR lawsuit last year. We had everything that went on the last couple months, the chaos of the government. You've got the interest rates terrible. Go look on I think my Instagram story from yesterday expired now. Yet another month where there's less inventory, the prices are higher, and there's less deals than the month before. And there's people around you getting sick, and it's like I just can't remember a time where I was at more funerals than weddings last year. It's just like it's the world is I was texting back and forth with a longtime friend and client. He's like, I'm really having a hard time finding joy. And it's at least, at least you've got a good group of people around you here that care and love about you. It's just a crappy time. So
Yeah. Yeah. Nick is exactly right. It's just a difficult time, and it seems like uh we're not Chicken Little. The whole sky is falling. And it's just been uh uh it's been a difficult time for all of us. It's been a difficult time for me for the last 2 days. Like I said, I had a trifecta of bad news, and you know what? It just is what it is. But you know what? We're going to make it through it because we are a strong and resilient industry, and we do good in the world. We help people with the most important decisions that they're ever going to make in their entire lives. And all we have to do is focus on the good that we do, even when people are telling us we don't. We know that we are doing good in the world.
guys, I need to actually end with this because this is pretty cool. Let me give you one more thing to screen share real quick. And again, thank you everybody for your time today. We love you guys. Um, I want to end with this. It is a tough time in the market, but we are doing really good things for the community. And there are people in this office that are winning and kicking butt right now. Remember that. I just got a picture from Jamal and Wayne Beals. They were like, "You're number one and number two agents." Well, guess what? Ha, you guys are kicking each other's butts left and right. I love the competition. Josh Berngard is back on top. He's now at 2.2 million in volume. Nicole Wheatley is now number one in number of units with 8 units closed for the year. So keep pushing, keep swimming. The world is on fire, but we are in this together, and you guys are doing great things. We love you. We appreciate you. This has been recorded. PJ, again, thank you for sticking on. I didn't realize you stayed on the whole time. Good, long time, good friend of mine. I owe you drinks the next time you're in Chicago. Lyle, thank you. Dan, thank you. Everybody, thank you. See you later.
Have a great day, everybody.
Go tear it up.
Thanks.